And so as we're looking and doom scrolling on social media, we're looking at curated content that focuses on the positive aspects of other people's lives. And often that's what we post of ourselves. We don't post the photos of our children losing their mind, screaming. We don't post us crying after a breakup. We don't post us getting demoted or fired. We don't usually post about these, defeating and often stressful negative parts of our life. We often post the prettiest aspects of our life, the most ideal version of ourselves. And so when we're presenting the most idealized view of our experiences and we're seeing the same in others, we're assuming that that's their everyday life. And I think we can all agree it's not. I don't know if you've all done this, but I often will post a nice photo of my children and then send a few of my friends like what was posted, what wasn't. And I think it's a really funny commentary on what we do, what we're willing to share, and how private we're willing to get, or how candid we're willing to get.
This is Dr. Laura. Welcome to Mind Candy Podcast, where we empower women's voices and tackle current issues related to psychology.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Laura. So glad to have you back. Today we're going to talk about something that I think is really relevant to a lot of us, and a lot of things that maybe we've seen on the news or felt ourselves or seen someone that we care about go through. And that is our propensity as a society and as individuals to engage in the social media comparison, or what I lovingly call it, the keeping up with the Joneses. So when we're talking about social media comparison, think about a few things before we really get started. Have you ever gone on social media and seen someone who's really in shape, or maybe a supermodel, or like a bodybuilder, or an actor who's super jacked up, and then felt in comparison bad about your body or ashamed or inadequate? Maybe you see someone who has climbed up the corporate ladder or in a position of power career-wise that you hope to get to, or maybe thought you'd be at right now, and you're not. Have you ever seen someone give a tour of their beautiful home and the decorating and been like, why is my house such a mess? And why can't I have a home like that? Maybe you're a parent and you're looking at a video of a child around your child's age and you're seeing all these milestones being met and these accomplishments, and maybe your kid hasn't met that yet, or maybe they can't. And you're wondering, what have I done wrong as a parent, or what do we need to do? Why can't we get to this situation or this landmark or this milestone? Maybe you're going on social media and there's yet another pregnancy announcement, and you've been struggling with fertility or have gone through pregnancy loss and are wondering why you can't also share in that joy and have that experience. Maybe you're lonely and single and you're looking at yet another engagement that's just been posted and you're wondering, when is it going to be my time to find my person? Maybe you're struggling to put food on the table and you're watching others go on these lavish vacations and you're stuck at work and you're like, why can't I be there? Why can't this happen for me? Maybe you're worried you're not doing enough, you're not accomplishing enough. Maybe you're not feeling healthy enough or loved enough. And these are a lot of issues that people bring to therapy when they talk about social media causing them to doubt themselves, causing them to feel incredibly inadequate. So let's dig into the research, because you all know I love that. According to the Pew Research Center, almost 70% of adults and over 80% of teens in the US use social media. If we think of social media comparison, we instantly kind of think of something negative because that's what's been in the news. That's what we talk about a lot. But comparison in general is a very human experience. It's often originally as natural as expected. It allows us to learn from others and to reach our potential. However, with social media comparison, that's been augmented into something that's not as positive, not as attainable in a positive way. No more imposter syndrome. Compass Psychological Services helps you build greater self-confidence. Before we dig into the nitty-gritty of social media comparison and what I see clinically and what often a lot of people experience personally, let's talk about the two types of social comparisons, which are, by the way, often dictated by our self-esteem. And that makes sense, doesn't it? If we're feeling good and we're seeing something online Maybe we're seeing that as attainable, or maybe we're seeing that as something that we want to aspire to. But if we're feeling bad about ourselves, we're often thinking of it in a negative manner and we're feeling very defeated. Like that's going to be something that never happens for us. So, an upward social comparison is, for instance, you admire your boss or your mentor. And because you have that respect for them, you have hope for the future that one day you're going to emulate them and be like that one day as you progress in your career or academic endeavors. Alternatively, and what we're really talking about today, is the downward social comparison. When we're feeling worse off, we're feeling inferior, and the things we're seeing are reminding us not of what could be, but what won't be. So let's think about this. Let's think about social media comparison. What's going on in our brain? Essentially, what happens is when we're engaging in social media consumption and we're starting to compare ourselves to other people, we're trying to perform in a certain way or be recognized in a certain way. It's activating our brain's reward center. It releases a chemical called dopamine, which many of us have heard of. It's often called as the feel-good chemical. It's associated with drugs, alcohol, sex, a lot of reinforcing, maybe originally or usually pleasurable activities that may or may not be healthy for us. So when we think of social media comparison and how that operates in our brain, what's going on is social media gives us what's called an unpredictable outcome. We're unsure of what kind of engagement we're going to have when we post something, when we post a video or we post an article or we post a picture. We're not sure of how many likes we're going to get, how many shares we're going to get, how many comments we're going to get. So because of that unpredictability, it keeps us coming back for more. It keeps us hungry for more. And in psychology, we call that reinforcement. Think about it. If you posted, every time you posted, you got a certain number of likes, you would know what was going to happen. So that wouldn't feel as gratifying or exciting. And so because that's the case, we're excited to see who interacts with us, how many likes we can get, how many comments. When we're sharing something we think is funny, we're hoping the other person thinks it's funny as well. And that's instant gratification. We post something, we share something, and people interact with us. And we're the one that's put it out there. And so that instant gratification is also incredibly reinforcing. So when we're thinking of the social media comparison, think about it for a second. You're scrolling through your phone, you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. And there are three categories in which case we're comparing ourselves to others. And it's abilities, status, and performance. And if you think about it, it makes sense. We are seeing someone who is able to do something maybe better than we are, and we're comparing ourselves to that. Maybe we just started a new habit, like we just started riding a bike and we're seeing somebody on like motocross, and we're like, wow, that would be really cool to do that one day. Status, maybe we're seeing somebody who has newfound wealth or just got a new promotion, and we're sitting there going, gosh, I wish that could happen for me one day.
Compass Psychological Services helps you manage stress and maintain a healthy work-life balance.
Maybe performance. Maybe we play a musical instrument and we see somebody just absolutely shredding it on a guitar, and we're just we're just learning. And in any of these, we're thinking about what our abilities are compared to someone else, our status compared to someone else, and our performance compared to someone else. And often with that downward comparison, we're idealizing someone else and we're putting ourselves down in the process and feeling inferior and feeling inadequate. Social media started out to social network. That's what social media intended to be, especially something like Facebook. I'm a millennial, and Facebook was only offered when you went to college. It's offered to almost anyone, but now it's a big part of social comparison. It's where we post our statuses, not just the literal ones, but where we are, what group we belong to, what we're doing. Every activity we engage in is really a social comparison based on what we're doing and who we're with and what we're wearing. It's often intended to boost our self-esteem and our belonging. because we're posting the greatest hits of our life. We're posting the positive parts of our life, usually. And so as we're looking and doom scrolling on social media, we're looking at curated content that focuses on the positive aspects of other people's lives. And often that's what we post of ourselves. We don't post the photos of our children losing their mind, screaming. We don't post us crying after a breakup. We don't post us getting demoted or fired. We don't usually post about these, defeating and often stressful negative parts of our life. We often post the prettiest aspects of our life, the most ideal version of ourselves. And so when we're presenting the most idealized view of our experiences and we're seeing the same in others, we're assuming that that's their everyday life. And I think we can all agree it's not. I don't know if you've all done this, but I often will post a nice photo of my children and then send a few of my friends like what was posted, what wasn't. And I think it's a really funny commentary on what we do, what we're willing to share, and how private we're willing to get, or how candid we're willing to get. And so always think about that is, oh, this is a beautiful family photo, but this is an idealized and curated content of someone's life. I always call it the greatest hits. We're not seeing those ugly, sad, vulnerable moments usually. And we all have them. And I think we can all agree that we have them every day. When we look constantly at all of this content that's curated and idealized, we become what? We become insecure. We feel inadequate. As we compare, we start feeling jealousy. The idioms of comparisons are odious and comparisons are the thief of joy. They're there for a reason. We begin ruminating. We begin overthinking. The research shows that social media use and overuse, especially since COVID, causes depression, anxiety, disordered eating, especially for young women in their teens and early 20s, when all they're seeing is an idealized body type that doesn't match most body types. A lot of sleep problems as people doom scroll for hours a night and then start ruminating about what they do and don't have. So with everything we're talking about today, I think a lot of us can really relate to this of not only what we see, but what we do. I'm guilty of it. I know that I've always only posted, my best moments often, and the others are private. They're not something I'm willing to share, but yet I'm still engaging in this reinforcement of a curated and idealized viewpoint of my life. And I think a lot of us can share in that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. That's what I'm willing to let people see that I'm not very close to. But we also have to know that that's what we're seeing in other people too, and remind ourselves of that. Of life is messy, life is imperfect, and life can get kind of ugly and chaotic. And so knowing that there's a holistic, there's a balanced perspective between all of those and behind all those beautiful photos that we see. And I think opening up this conversation is really important. And I'm so curious to what you all think about this. And if this is something that you've gone through in your life, that social media comparison and feeling inadequate or like you're not measuring up.
Even the most successful couples can have breakdowns in communication. However, Compass Psychological Services provides tools to help navigate these pressures together.
So, I love the research and I've referenced a few things, but overall the research is saying that to date, the research hasn't been able to keep up with the technology innovations and the social trends of what are going on with social media comparison. They simply haven't been able to keep up. And so there are several articles that are published that I based a lot of this on today's episode, but essentially the research is saying we need more information. But ultimately, they do have a pretty good grasp of it's not going in a great direction and it's causing a lot of people pain and anxiety. And a lot of people who maybe didn't have anxiety or depression are partially attributing it to social media and how online we are as people these days and how much of our life plays out in front of thousands of people now. If you think about it, for all my millennials and Gen Zs out there, we didn't really know if we missed something unless somebody told us directly. When we took photos, we had to wait a few days or a week for it to get developed and go to, Walgreens or somewhere else to get it processed. Instead of that instant access to everyone's whereabouts, pinning locations and immediately posting, locations and where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. That's a pretty new concept. It's these newer generations who are having to face not only that immediate gratification, but that immediate upset of, oh, I'm not included today at the party. And so it's something to really think about. It's something for, the younger generations to grapple with. And it's also for us older generations, can't believe I'm saying that, to really have empathy with and adjust to, not only as humans, but for those of us who are working as clinicians and trying to understand this new world. So with all of this being said, here are my ideas on how to start working through some of these negative impacts. I think just starting to be aware of social media comparisons, they exist. They're abound in what's going on in our lives, in our social lives especially, and they impact our self-view, sometimes for the better, oftentimes for the worst. Limit social media use and follow healthy accounts. This can be hard when we want to unwind and look at a few funny videos, but be aware, take stock of the kind of accounts you're looking at and the kind of things you're looking at when you're unwinding and scrolling through all these social media platforms. What are you looking at? Is it helping you or hurting you? Is it causing you anxiety or is it relaxing you? Ensure your focus on these social media accounts and go, okay, maybe they're about an interest you have. Maybe they're about something that's more balanced rather than celebrity gossip or looking at mansions or looking at these really extreme versions of life. Make sure you're focusing on something that is entertaining in a supportive way. Make sure that you have a live rather than online support circle. And then that's front and center, that you have a support system to talk about these things with. And if you don't have that, look into maybe joining a group or finding a trusted therapist to work on these issues with. Be really accountable of the information you're absorbing. The kinds of things that you're reading and listening to, are they an expert? What is their value in your life? Are they adding value or are they causing you to question yourself in a negative manner? Balance objective areas of growth and take note of gratitude sources. It's one thing to have goals. It's another to constantly feel like you're never measuring up. It's one thing to address things that need to change and are not going well in your life. It's another to not be grateful because you're constantly feeling upset about the things you don't feel like you have when you're comparing yourself to other people. Some things that have been suggested and that have happened is there's an option, for instance, in Instagram to suppress or decrease the likes feature. That can cause people to not feel so intently connected to that aspect of social media. Another thing to do is to decrease your mass sharing and to make your social media experience a more intimate one rather than appealing to a huge audience. Maybe you only share things to a certain number of close friends. So these are all ideas that not only I have, but what the research shows as well. Tell me what you guys think about these. What are some ideas you have, or what are some ways that you've decreased or successfully limited your social media comparison? Or maybe there are questions that you have for other people. I'd love to get us all engaged about this in a respectful and thoughtful way. Start sharing information and tips. That is all for me today about social media comparison. This is Dr. Laura signing off from Mind Candy. Excited to hear everyone's thoughts about this. As always, do not forget to hit subscribe and like. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Laura with Mind Candy. A quick note just to discuss, as I am an ethical gal, ethical psychologist, none of these subjects or the information in the podcast constitute any kind of therapeutic relationship. All of that information can be found in our terms and conditions. Everything we discuss on Mind Candy are the experience of myself and my guests, and it does not constitute advice or a therapeutic relationship. Thank you so much, and don't forget to hit subscribe.